The year was 1879, and the Kansas prairie stretched endlessly in every direction, a sea of golden grass that rippled in waves beneath the relentless sun. Daniel Carter was a cattle driver, part of a crew moving a herd from Texas to the railheads in Abilene. He was young, just 25, with sun-weathered skin and calloused hands that told the story of a hard life lived outdoors. He had dreams of one day owning his own small ranch, but for now, he was just another cowboy earning his pay one dusty mile at a time. The drive had been particularly brutal that season. They had lost cattle to rustlers, weathered 2 stampedes, and crossed rivers swollen with spring runoff. Daniel's horse had thrown a shoe 3 days earlier, and he had fallen behind the main herd while walking the animal to prevent further injury. His water skin had run dry that morning, and the summer heat was becoming dangerous. When Daniel spotted the small homestead in the distance, relief flooded through him. It was a modest structure, a simple wooden house with a barn and a well, surrounded by a small garden that somehow flourished in the harsh prairie environment. As he drew closer, he could see a woman working in the garden, her movements efficient and purposeful even in the oppressive heat. She looked up as he approached, and Daniel found himself momentarily forgetting his thirst. She was beautiful, certainly, with honey-blonde hair pinned up beneath a simple bonnet and blue eyes that assessed him with cautious intelligence. But more than that, there was something in her bearing, a quiet strength and competence that seemed to radiate from her even across the distance between them. Daniel removed his hat as he reached the fence line. "Ma'am, I apologize for the intrusion. I'm with a cattle drive headed north, but I fell behind, and I'm afraid my water ran out some miles back. Would you be willing to spare some water for me and my horse?" The woman set down her gardening tools and studied him for a long moment. Daniel stood still, letting her assess whether he posed any threat. Finally, she nodded and walked toward the well. "You can water your horse at the trough," she said, her voice carrying a slight accent he couldn't quite place. "Come up to the porch when you're done, and I'll get you some water and food. You look like you haven't eaten properly in days." Daniel did as instructed, grateful beyond words. The horse drank deeply while Daniel splashed some of the cool well water on his face and neck. When the animal was satisfied, he tied it in the shade and walked up to the porch where the woman was waiting with a pitcher of water and a plate of bread, cheese, and dried meat. "Sit," she commanded, and Daniel obeyed, too tired and thirsty to do anything else. He drank the first cup of water so quickly he barely tasted it. The second he savored, and as his desperate thirst began to ease, he became more aware of his surroundings and his hostess. "My name is Daniel Carter," he said between bites of food. "I'm mighty grateful for your kindness, ma'am. This is more than I had any right to ask for." "I am Ingrid Larson," she replied, settling into a rocking chair across from him. "And out here, helping a traveler in need isn't kindness, it's necessity. Any of us could find ourselves in the same situation." As Daniel ate, Ingrid studied him with those perceptive blue eyes. "You are alone?" she asked. "Where is your crew?" Daniel explained about his horse's shoe and falling behind. "I'll catch up to them by tomorrow if I ride through the night. They're moving slow with the herd." "Your horse is in no condition to be ridden tonight," Ingrid said firmly. "The animal needs rest, and so do you. You will stay here tonight. Leave at first light." Daniel started to protest, aware of the impropriety of the situation, but Ingrid cut him off. "I am a widow, Mr. Carter. My husband died 2 years ago from pneumonia. I am alone here, yes, but I am not helpless, and I am not concerned about gossip from neighbors who live 20 miles away. Your horse needs rest. That is a fact. You will sleep in the barn." The matter decided, Ingrid set about preparing a proper meal while Daniel tended to his horse and helped with some of the heavier chores around the homestead. He repaired a section of fence that had come loose, moved some heavy feed sacks that Ingrid had been struggling with, and reinforced a weak board in the barn wall. It felt good to be useful, to repay her hospitality with labor. Over dinner, they talked, and Daniel found himself sharing more than he usually did with strangers. There was something about Ingrid that invited confidence. She listened with genuine interest as he spoke about his dreams of having his own land, his years working cattle drives, his family back in Missouri that he hadn't seen in 3 years. In turn, Ingrid shared her story. She and her husband had come from Sweden, full of dreams about farming in America. They had worked brutally hard to build the homestead, to break the prairie sod and coax crops from the stubborn earth. Then, one winter, her husband had caught a chill that turned into pneumonia, and within 2 weeks, he was gone, leaving Ingrid alone on the prairie. Everyone told me to sell, to go back east or to a town where I could find work, Ingrid said, her jaw set with determination. But this land, this home, we built it together. His sweat is in every board, every fence post. I will not abandon it. It must be incredibly difficult, managing everything alone, Daniel said with genuine admiration. It is, Ingrid admitted. There are things I cannot do, or can do only with great difficulty. The heavy work, repairs that require strength, I do not have. I manage, but it is hard. Very hard. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the sun set over the prairie, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple that took Daniel's breath away. He had seen countless sunsets on the trail, but somehow, watching this one from Ingrid's porch felt different, more significant. You dream of your own ranch, Ingrid said suddenly. But you are a cowboy, always moving. How will you ever save enough money, always spending your pay in trail towns? Daniel had no good answer to that. It was the central contradiction of his life, working toward a goal that his lifestyle made nearly impossible to achieve. Ingrid turned to look at him directly, and in the fading light, Daniel could see both vulnerability and resolve in her expression. I have a proposition for you, Mr. Carter. You may think it strange, perhaps even improper, but I ask that you hear me out before you respond. Daniel nodded, curious and slightly apprehensive. You came here asking for water, Ingrid continued. But what if, instead of just water, I offered you something more? This homestead, it is 160 acres of good land with water rights. The house is solid, the barn is sound, and the land, with proper management and enough labor, could support cattle, horses, and crops. I can manage the household, the garden, the chickens, even help with lighter farm work. What I cannot manage alone are the things that require strength and experience with livestock and large-scale repairs. She paused, gathering her courage. What if, instead of chasing your dream alone, never getting closer to it, you stayed here? What if you married me, not for romance or passion, but as a partnership? You would have the land you dream of, I would have the help I desperately need. We could build something together. Daniel sat stunned, the half-eaten piece of bread forgotten in his hand. Of all the things he had expected when he approached this homestead asking for water, a marriage proposal had not been among them. Mom. Ingrid. I don't know what to say. We've only just met. I know, Ingrid said, her voice steady despite the bold proposition she had just made. But consider this. How many couples married in the old country or back east never met before their wedding day? How many marriages are arranged by families for practical reasons? At least we have met, have talked, have some sense of each other. I am not asking for love, Daniel. I am asking for partnership, for mutual benefit, for a practical arrangement that gives us both what we need. Daniel stood and walked to the edge of the porch, his mind reeling. He thought about the years stretching ahead, always working for someone else, always moving, never building anything permanent. He thought about the loneliness of the trail, the rough company of men who lived hard and died young. He thought about this woman, alone on the prairie, fighting to hold onto a dream she and her husband had built together. What about love? He finally asked, his back still turned to her. What about it? Ingrid replied pragmatically. Love is not a lightning bolt, Daniel. Sometimes it grows slowly, from respect and shared work and building a life together. My parents had an arranged marriage. They learned to love each other over time. Perhaps we would too. Or perhaps we would simply have a good partnership, mutual respect, and a life that is better than what either of us could achieve alone. Would that be so terrible? Daniel turned to face her. You would really marry a man you just met? Trust him with everything you have. Ingrid smiled slightly. I have been watching you since you arrived. Daniel Carter. I see how you treat your horse, with patience even though you are exhausted. I see how you repaid my hospitality with work without being asked. I see how you speak of your dreams with both hope and honesty about the obstacles. These things tell me about your character. Is it a gamble? Yes. But what in life is not a gamble? Staying here alone is a gamble. You continuing to drift is a gamble. At least this gamble gives us both a chance at something better. Daniel spent a sleepless night in the barn, wrestling with the most important decision of his life. By the time the sun rose, painting the prairie in shades of gold and pink, he had made his choice. He found Ingrid already up, making breakfast. She looked at him with a question in her eyes but said nothing, waiting for him to speak. "I came here yesterday asking for water," Daniel said slowly. "You're offering me a whole lot more than that. A home, land, a partner, a future. It's crazy, and I barely know you, and this could be the biggest mistake either of us ever makes." Ingrid's expression remained neutral, but he could see the tension in her shoulders. "But it could also be the best decision we ever make," Daniel continued. "I'm willing to take that gamble if you are. I'll stay. I'll marry you. We'll build this life together and see what happens." The smile that broke across Ingrid's face was like the sunrise, transforming her features with genuine joy and relief. "Then we have a bargain, Daniel Carter." They were married 3 weeks later by a traveling preacher, with neighbors from the surrounding homesteads serving as witnesses. It was a simple ceremony, practical and brief, much like the partnership it formalized. But as Daniel slipped a simple gold band onto Ingrid's finger, he felt something shift inside him, a sense of possibility and hope he hadn't felt in years. The first year was hard. They were essentially strangers learning to live together, to work together, to build something from the foundation of a practical arrangement. There were awkward moments, disagreements about how things should be done, times when the weight of their hasty decisions seemed overwhelming. But slowly, day by day, something grew between them. Respect first, born from watching each other work tirelessly to improve their land. Then friendship, developed through shared meals and evening conversations on the porch. Then affection, emerging naturally from small acts of kindness and consideration. And finally, love, real and deep, not the passionate lightning bolt of storybooks but something stronger and more lasting, built on foundation of partnership and mutual respect. 5 years after Daniel rode up to Ingrid's homestead asking for water, they had a thriving ranch, 3 children, and a love that had grown from the most unlikely of beginnings. When people asked how they met, they would smile at each other, and Ingrid would say, "He came asking for water. I gave him everything instead." And Daniel, reaching for her hand, would add, "Best drink of water I ever had."